fin, ya quedaste en la historia. 10 de abril del 2003 se fue pa' eterna memoria el compa Coquio Castro, en los mezcales te llora.
In a Southern California neighborhood, police equipped with armored vehicles and riot gear recently rounded up suspected drug dealers and users. Police departments conduct military-style raids like this across America. And while they seem to be purely local drug busts,
go back inside! Go back inside!
In fact, police targets are the sometimes unwitting retail ends of global drug networks based in Mexico and supplied by Colombians. Drug-related murders and epidemic corruption in Mexico and along the U.S.-Mexico border highlight the vicious competition among the 4 main Mexican drug syndicates. At stake is the immense income generated by the illegal narcotics trade. The drug syndicates, according to the U.S. government, make $7 billion a year. That's almost as much as Microsoft earned last year. In the United States, seizures of narcotics and cash show that the far-reaching tentacles of powerful Mexican drug cartels are shaping the face of organized crime.
A recent case involving seizures of massive quantities of drugs and money highlights the far-flung influence of one cartel north of the border. It also demonstrates the enormous challenge confronting law enforcement in facing transnational, multi-layered narcotics businesses.
That case involved 34-year-old Jorge Castro, who in March pleaded guilty to 2 of 12 federal narcotics charges. In a plea agreement, Castro admitted trafficking in tons of cocaine and tens of millions of dollars. A judge sentenced him to nearly 17 years in prison. Although he was arrested in Los Angeles, Castro is a Mexican citizen. More importantly, according to U.S. authorities, Castro was part of the notorious Mexican drug organization headed by brothers Benjamin and Ramon Arellano Felix. Castro is related to the men. Headquartered in Tijuana, across the border from San Diego, the Arellano Felix organization is said to be one of the most ruthless and powerful crime syndicates in the world. It is believed responsible for the murders of dozens of Mexican prosecutors, judges, police officials, suspected rivals, and journalists. According to Michael Braun of the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA, Castro took his orders directly from Arellano Felix leaders.
Jorge Castro was the highest-ranking member of the AFO, or the Arellano Felix organization, that was ever arrested on U.S. soil. The Castro organization, Jorge Castro, also known as Jefe, or the boss, he was responsible for the daily operations of a core cell in the Los Angeles area that was responsible for distributing multi-hundreds of kilograms of cocaine all across the United States.
The DEA was one of 6 federal and state agencies that spent 15 months investigating Castro's organization. The investigation led to 50 arrests in Southern California, Georgia, New York, Illinois, and Texas. But the Castro network was only one of many connections to Mexican drug syndicates. This informant, considered reliable by the DEA, says the Arellano Felix group uses numerous operatives like Castro to run U.S. operations.
I think there were 20 to 30 people, more or less.
Doing what?
Lieutenants of the cartel.
Meaning running operations in the United States, is that what you mean?
Yes.
Peter Smith, director of Latin American Studies at the University of California, San Diego, has studied narco-traffickers. He says Castro's distribution network serviced what is essentially a major business enterprise.
They do the things that we would expect corporations to do. They form transnational partnerships when necessary. They vertically integrate their operations when that is advantageous, which would mean coming into the retail market in the United States. They diversify their product lines. The Arellano Felix group not only does cocaine, but it also does methamphetamine in a growing measure, and also transships heroin and marijuana as well. They are willing to make overhead investments to protect their market share. You might call it corruption, you might call it bribery, but it comes back to shipping more goods than they really expect will reach the market, because they expect that usually 10 or 15% of their shipments are going to be caught.
Castro was indicted with 8 Southern California subordinates. Like traditional mob families, several were related to each other. To transport drugs and to avoid detection, they operated on a need-to-know basis, with 2 wings, one responsible for drugs, the other for cash.
The reason that these organizations are highly compartmentalized, I mean, it's just smart business sense on their part. If one of these folks gets taken down, they really can't identify anyone other than, those that they work with on a day-to-day basis.
The top men in Castro's organization did not call attention to themselves. They lived middle-class lives in suburban Southern California neighborhoods like this. One key associate, Luis Valenzuela, now a fugitive, lived in this house across the street from a neighborhood watch sign. He owned a restaurant in a nondescript shopping mall. The organization used houses and businesses in the LA area as temporary warehouses for drugs or money. Castro workers used vehicles often equipped with hidden compartments to transport drugs within the U.S. and money to Mexico. Often the hiding places were activated through a combination of switches. L.A. Deputy Sheriff Gene Johns, who was part of the task force that investigated Castro, demonstrated an elaborately constructed hiding place. He asked us to conceal his face.
If you touch it, you're hitting metal, you think you're hitting the roof of the vehicle.
It looks just like the roof.
It looks exactly like a showroom roof.
How difficult was this to detect?
Very difficult. 4 hours to find this one.
And what was in here?
40 kilos of coke. We had 5 of these units, 8 kilos per metal tray.
Braun says the well-financed traffickers have been helped by the availability of state-of-the-art communications technology.
They're using cell phones, they're using fax machines, they're using pagers to communicate. Again, some of the cell phones are encrypted, some aren't. They go to great lengths, okay, to make their operation as precise as they can.
To investigate Castro and his network, agents got federal court orders to wiretap 29 phones. They listened to hundreds of phone calls. Suspicious traffickers often spoke in crudely disguised code.
The girls are very pretty to go to the dance.
Girls, the word used by Juan Carlos Perez Lopez, one of those indicted, described cocaine.
Yes, because they told me it was an hour and a half.
An hour and a half was 150 kilograms of cocaine. Some calls were ominous. In one, Jorge Castro seemed to order 2 murders.
You go and invite that girl to go out somewhere and pick her up and kill her.
Police say they don't know if Castro's organization actually carried out the hits. But as with other organized crime groups, according to this informant, violence and intimidation were common.
Was Castro or his organization responsible for any murders?
Yes. I don't know which ones.
In the United States or in Mexico?
In both places.
Over drug-related disagreements?
Yes. They're called adjustments of accounts.
Adjustments of accounts. Someone owed someone money and didn't pay them, or drugs and didn't pay them?
Correct.
Wiretaps often led police officials to stakeouts. Traffickers commonly exchanged money and drugs in public areas, such as this shopping center parking lot in Ontario, California. Police surveillance video of the lot in January 1998 shows a common technique, switching cars. A courier gets out of one car and gets into the passenger's side of a nearby vehicle. At the same time, a man with a baseball cap, later convicted as a Castro associate, gets into the first car. Both cars leave, the switch is made.